और हेडलाइंस के बाद अब खबरों को विस्तार से जानेंगे। स्मार्ट मीटर लगाने के सरकार के फैसले से कांग्रेस नाराज है। पार्टी नेताओं ने आज तालाब टीलू इलाके में विरोध प्रदर्शन किया, जिसमें स्थानीय लोग भी शामिल रहे। प्रदर्शनकारियों के अनुसार स्मार्ट मीटर की वजह से बिल आम आदमी की पहुंच से बाहर हो गया है। इतने भारी भरकम बिल का भुगतान कर पाना मुश्किल है, इसलिए सरकार को जम्मू में अपना फैसला वापस लेना चाहिए।
जम्मू में स्मार्ट मीटर लगाने के खिलाफ एक मुहिम चलाई गई है, जिसमें कई सियासी पार्टियां भी हैं और आम लोग भी शामिल हैं। इनका कहना है कि जम्मू के लोग अभी भी पसमानदा हैं और उन पे अतिरिक्त बोझ डालना सही नहीं होगा और स्मार्ट मीटर जो है वो जम्मू के लोगों के हितों के खिलाफ है, उसको कतई जो है सहन नहीं किया जाएगा। आपने ये प्रोटेस्ट रैली निकाली,
आज का जो प्रोटेस्ट है ये बिजली डिपार्टमेंट के खिलाफ है। जिस तरीके से स्मार्ट मीटरों के तहत गरीब जनता को लूटा जा रहा है, उसी के तहत आज तालाब टिल्लो क्षेत्र के अंदर सारी जनता जो सड़कों के ऊपर है। हम यही कहना चाहते हैं कि जो गरीब जनता की जो लूट खसोट है, किसी को कोई पता नहीं चल रहा है कि कहां से इतने बड़े बड़े बिल आ रहे हैं, कैसे हो रहा है। किसी को पूछा जाए कोई जवाब देने को तैयार नहीं है। सिर्फ लोगों के हाथ में एक बड़े बड़े बिल थमाए जा रहे हैं। लोग आज परेशान हैं, मजबूर हैं, अच्छे वादा करके, अच्छे दिनों का वादा करके।
लेकिन सरकार का कहना है यदि 24 घंटे बिजली चाहिए तो बिजली के बिल देने होंगे। तो आपको लगता है कि कहीं न कहीं मिल बैठ के बात करनी होगी?
हम यही तो कह रहे हैं, कोई बात सुनने को तैयार ही नहीं है। अगर हम जहाँ बिजली डिपार्टमेंट के जो अधिकारी हैं उनके पास जाते हैं, उनके पास कोई जवाब नहीं है। बिजली जिस तरीके से कहा जा रहा है कि 24 घंटे, यहाँ तो बिजली आती ही नहीं। 2-2, 4-4 घंटे का जो यहाँ पे कट किया जा रहा है, लोग परेशान हैं। एक बिल इतना बड़ा, ऊपर से बिजली नहीं है, तो जनता जाए तो जाए कहाँ?
आप क्या कहेंगे, क्योंकि आप आज सड़कों पे आए हैं, आम लोग भी शामिल हो गए इसमें?
ये जो लोग शामिल हुए हैं ना, ये जो स्मार्ट मीटर लगे हैं, ये बिल्कुल नाजायज लगे हैं। जो पहले मीटर उनको क्या हुआ, वो भी तो मीटर थे, वहाँ तो बिजली 500, 700, 1000 बिल आता था। एसी लगा के भी 1000 रुपये बिल आता, अभी 20,000 बिल, 15,000 बिल। लोग कहाँ से लाएं? जिसकी 500 रुपये दिहाड़ी है वो बिल बेटे कहाँ से देंगे? बहुत मुश्किल है लोगों के लिए जीना।
मांग करते हैं सरकार से,
हम जो यही कहते हैं स्मार्ट मीटर बंद कर दो।
आप देख सकते हैं कि इन लोगों का कहना है कि स्मार्ट मीटर्स को बंद किया जाए। स्मार्ट मीटर्स में कई लोगों के 20,000 से ज्यादा के बिल यहाँ पे आए हैं, जो पहले 1,000 तक आते थे। तो लोगों का गुस्सा जगह जगह फूटा है। जम्मू के कई इलाकों में इस तरह के प्रोटेस्ट देखे जा सकते हैं इन दिनों, और लोगों की एक ही मांग है कि स्मार्ट मीटर्स को हटाया जाए। ये फैसला हुकूमत का उनको बर्दाश्त नहीं है। कैमरामैन चांद के साथ राजेंद्र, न्यूज़ 18 जम्मू।
So much talk and so much focus on the startup ecosystem. India is one of the leading startup nations today, home to 100+ unicorns. Well, these ladies here are not running foundations that have unicorn-like valuations, but they certainly have unicorn-like values, and that is what we're attempting to uncover and discover through their story. So, ladies and gentlemen, please join me in giving a big round of applause to our achievers here as we quick start our Shri Shakti session with Swayam Shakti. Lisa, I'm going to start by talking to you because in many ways, ladies and gentlemen, Lisa's story was not just about starting up, but it was about starting over. I don't know how many of you will know this, but in 2013, she's of course a classical dancer, had spent her whole life dancing. That was her passion, that was her life. But in 2013, you were on a transatlantic flight. You had a medical emergency. That medical condition led you to give up dancing altogether. And in 2014, you decided to change your passion. You decided to reignite the spark that you had, the love for dance, and converted that into a collective. Lisa, I want you to talk to me about starting over, the resilience, the grace, and courage that it took for you to do so.
Yeah. Thank you, Sirin. I think behind all this strength, lies, the most important thing is faith. And I'm thankful to my father, my parents, who taught us from day one to be connected to a supreme soul. for us it was Krishna. So Krishna Bhakti was resounding in our house all the time. And my father said, "Mu thai no thai, Krishna thibo." So that connection was said. And that faith did work wonder. And the second thing was self-belief. Since childhood, I have been into debate, into all kind of extracurricular activities, winning, losing, all the time. So I had learned in the process of last 30, 35 years, the idea is to keep moving. I think that is what helped me. So one is self-belief, and the second one is let's not get too much into spirituality, but faith matters.
Faith absolutely matters, and you've taught us the audacity of hope. You've really reinvented yourself, taking charge of your life once again, getting it back in control after a very debilitating illness. And you're today spearheading Nirgun, which is trying to uplift women in rural parts of the country. And you're getting artisans, weavers together, and you're trying to change their lives through the work that you're doing.
Yeah, because actually I'm learning in the process. When you get into the grassroots, you'll see how hard, it's a lot of hard work. It's a lot of patience. They take a month or two to weave a sari, many of them. And still, they won't earn that kind of money had they been a clerk, officer attendant, somewhere else. But still, they are artists, because that is I always treat my viewers as artists.
Yes.
That creativity, that kick they get out of it, creating something that cannot come from being employed somewhere else.
Well, that's an example of patient capital. That's the kind of capital that we require, where people are actually investing their time, energy. It's not just about money, but it's investing your time, energy, and your passion into helping others as well. Akshita, I want to come to you now. And you decided to give up on a career. You were part of the corporate world, you were outside of India, you decided to come back and in a way reclaim your identity, reclaim your roots. Why did you feel the need to do that? Why is it that you want to convert, in your words, this property into a platform that helps connect people and tell the stories that you believe need to be told?
So I come from Mayurbhanj, and now it's very familiar with our President of India. But while I was growing up, it was known as a district which has one of the poorest districts of India. It was an aspirational district for many years. It's in the northernmost part of Orissa. It was also known as a place with insurgency. It was part of the Red Corridor. And so growing up, we had a narrative we told ourselves when we come from places like this. These are places on conflict. Things like this happen over there. This is what you expect from places like this. And we were known very much for our development or our lower development indicators than actually the talent or the entrepreneurship or the resilience. And so when I was growing up and I had kind of traveled the world and I was in New York and I was working there, I kind of met someone when I was back in India. And if you come from a place which is not a capital, you'll always be like, instead of saying you come from you come from wherever you do, you say I come somewhere close to Chennai or close to Bangalore, close to Bombay. You kind of become the stories you've heard yourself talk about, or you become the stories you've heard of. And so I met a very young girl and I asked her where she was from and she said, oh, I come from Bangalore. And so she said, where are you from? I said, I come from Mayurbhanj. And she's like, oh, I actually also come from Bhadrak, which is near Mayurbhanj. She's like, but no one knows places in Orissa, so we don't say it. And I felt so bad that we actually grew up embarrassed of where we come from. And so something I wanted to do in my life was retell the story of the place I come from. Because when we come from somewhere, we recognize it not just because of the development indicators of GDP, but we recognize it because of the strength of our grandmothers. Or we know the best Michelin star cooks can sometimes be the people working in our houses. So I think that it was important for me to come back, and the last bastion of my family legacy, the Mayurbhanj dynasty, was a home for foreign dignitaries called the Belgaria Palace. And all the architecture in Mayurbhanj was built by women rulers because the men were usually fighting. So the thing about women is, we know that we can do it. Hum kar sakte hai. Sometimes we just wait for that permission or someone's hand holding, someone to give us that extra raise or the job or allow us permission to go out and take the job. We know we can do the job. We just need a little bit of support. So I think Belgaria was the support I wanted to be able to give to the people in the community. And you're right, it's not a startup. However, we wanted to build it on the principles of a startup. So when people come and stay with us, a percentage of funds can actually go back to mobilize non-profits in the community, such as Mayurbhanj Chhau, which is actually a dance form which was patronized by the Royal Army. So not allowed to be performed by women. But you see, now that the men are all leaving for jobs, it's the women's responsibility to carry on our cultural traditions and storytelling, albeit in a different way. So for me, it was important that actually to start off, rather than a business or something else, actually all of us can start off with just changing the narrative and the story. It doesn't require capital, but more communication.
Absolutely. It requires capital, it requires commitment, and it requires consistent communication. And you've been able to sort of now unapologetically tell your story. Yeah?
Yes, yes.
Absolutely. And that's wonderful to see. But Lachik, I want to come to you now because there are many similarities in the stories that we just heard here from Akshita as well as your story. You were also working abroad, you were in Japan, and then you decided to come back to India because it was what your grandmother told you, and Lachik comes from Ladakh, and your grandmother told you, what will you do for our land? So Lachik, what are you hoping to do for your land?
Yes, so I share a very similar story, and it's so nice to hear it, and I totally resonate with what you've said as well. I chose to move to Ladakh in 2017, also seeing how much Ladakh had changed. I think my memories of Ladakh as a child didn't exist the way I remember it, and I think Dolkhar, which I've set up in Leh right now, was a medium to sort of preserve that, and it was a very personal journey for me because I didn't get the opportunity to grow up there, but I always felt connected to the place, and 4 years of constructing Dolkhar taught me so much more about my own land, my own community, my people, and you know, tourism it runs Ladakh's economy, so it had to be the driving force to sort of create that meaningful impact, and that's what we've tried to do through Dolkhar, and you know, just taking inspiration from traditional values and
you know,
practices.
both these ladies are being very modest. It is the Time magazine that says Mayurbhanj as well as Ladakh are the places to visit in 2023, and both of these women-led tourism, hospitality businesses are actually making that change happen. So a big round of applause to Lachik and Akshita. But Tala, I want to come to you. Tala is a lawyer. She's been practicing law for 2 decades now. But you decided to start up in 2012, Tala. And not just that, the mission in the last few years really has been to try and open up the pipeline of talent to people who may not necessarily have access to the kind of education that you and I had access to. Take me through what you're hoping to do with the Law Foundation and the Accelerator program and why this means so much to you.
So I think the trigger has been more because of my background. I grew up in Srinagar and I had to move out because of all the trouble that was there. And I think that taught me to be fearless and a certain amount of resilience. I'll give you, very quickly, I'll give you 3 specific examples. When I moved from Srinagar to Wellams, you know, we were not used to, I knew English, but we weren't used to talking in English. And that took time for me to make friends. And that's where I learned how to adapt. And then when I moved for a job to Bombay, I wanted to be financially independent. So I didn't take money from parents. So that's where I learned financial independence. All of these I mentioned because I think today I'm a sum of all my experiences. So, you know, adapting to the environment, being able to be financially independent. And when I started Lawyers at Work, which is my law firm, at that time, there weren't that many women-led law firms, and I didn't even have a partner.
There's still not that many women-led law firms.
So I think I had this thing, what's the worst that can happen? If I'm an entrepreneur, everyone will want to take me for a job. So what's the worst? If it doesn't work, I will get a job. I was quite confident. So I had that self-confidence. I built it. It doesn't happen, you know, the mind chatter and all of that. So I built it for myself. And sure enough, it's been over 10 years and I've been able to continue it. That's my corporate.
Yes.
But for the foundation, actually, it was when I was running once, I mean, if I may take a moment,
please,
because that was the turning point. I was running around the lake and I saw this girl on a Sunday morning and she was going for her exam and she was very excited. She wasn't one of those children who said Sunday morning exam. She said, you know, here we have lockdowns, all of that, and therefore these were COVID days when allowances were made for sitting at home, and she said, I'm just happy I'll get to go and I may get promoted to the next class. She had a sparkle in her eye.
Yeah.
And you know, she knew opportunity cost. And I said, this is a child. Like, she was really young. I said, if they don't have this kind of, some kind of support, and I always wanted to come back and do something. I said, I've had the privilege of exposure and I've had a very good life. So I wanted to come back.
तो न्यूज 18 नेटवर्क का मेगा शो नारी शक्ति का जश्न, शी शक्ति का सम्मान, राइजिंग इंडिया शी शक्ति सम्मान। एक छोटा सा मेरी माटी मेरा देश के तहत शोपियां के आखिरी गांव में तिरंगा रैली निकाली गई। विशाल तिरंगा रैली में स्थानीय लोगों, पंचायत निकायों और स्थानीय पुलिस ने भाग लिया।
शान और बान यानी तिरंगा हर जगह लहराई दिखाई दे रहा है, लेकिन अगर हम जिला शोपियान की बात करेंगे, सबसे संवेदनशील इलाका यानी कि सिक्योरिटी के लिहाज से सबसे हसास तरीन इलाका और मुगल रोड यानी जिला शोपियान का आखिरी गांव हिरपोरा में आज पहली बार तिरंगा रैली देखने को मिल रही है। यहाँ के जो सरपंच है वो इसको लीड कर रहे हैं और उसके साथ साथ यहाँ के जो नौजवान हैं वो इसका साथ दे रहे हैं, क्योंकि 15 अगस्त यानी कि आज़ादी का दिन मनाया जा रहा है और पूरे हिंदुस्तान में ये मैसेज जा रही है कि शोपियान के साथ साथ पूरे वादी कश्मीर जो है इस तिरंगे को बुलंद करने के लिए, इसकी शान को बरकरार रखने के लिए इस तरह की रैलियां निकाली जा रही। अगर जो पहले इस तरह नहीं हो रहा था, लेकिन अब जो है अब हर तरह तिरंगा ही तिरंगा नजर आ रहा है। हमारे साथ है हिरपोरा इस इलाके के सरपंच एजाज अहमद। एजाज, इससे पहले तिरंगा इस तरह रैलियां नहीं निकलती थी, ये जिला शोपियान का आखिरी गाँव है और आप जो ये रैली है तिरंगा रैली है इसकी आप लीड कर रहे हैं, तो क्या मैसेज है इस जो आप रैली कर रहे हैं, इससे क्या मैसेज देना चाहते हैं आप?
देखो, इससे पहले जो पॉलिटिकल पार्टीज यहाँ पे थे किसी को मौका नहीं मिल रहा था, यहाँ पे दंगे फसाद होते थे, यहाँ पे स्टोन पेल्ट्री होती थी और यहाँ पे मैक्सिमम हर डिस्ट्रिक्ट में दिन को 3-3, 4-4 लड़के मार जाते थे, बेचारे किसी को मौका नहीं देते थे। आज आपने देखा है पिछले अगर हम 2014 या 2018 की अगर हम बात करेंगे तो ये नया कश्मीर बन चुका है। हम हिंदुस्तानी है, हिंदुस्तान हमारा है। इंशाल्लाह ये तिरंगा हमारी कौम की निशानी है और हमें अपनी हिंदुस्तान का तिरंगा अपने हाथ में रखना है, अपने देश को आगे बढ़ाना है।
ये देश हमारा है, ये तिरंगा हमारा है। कहीं ना कहीं इनका इशारा जो मेन स्ट्रीम पार्टीज़ है वो यहाँ पे जो है कहीं ना कहीं हालात ख़राब करने के ज़िम्मेदार थे, इसलिए इन चीज़ों को दिखाई नहीं दिया जाता था उस वक्त। लेकिन अब जो हालात बदल रहे हैं और कहीं ना कहीं यहाँ पे जो है अब लोग भी खुल्लम खुला सड़कों पे आ रहे हैं और तिरंगा की जो शान और बान इसको यानी कि बरकरार रखने के लिए इस तरह की रैलियाँ अब आयोजित हो रही है। इरशाद मलिक, न्यूज़ 18 नेटवर्क, शोपियान।
मेरी माटी मेरा देश कार्यक्रम का आयोजन नगर पालिका समिति मागाम द्वारा मागाम बडगाम में सब डिवीजन बीरवा और बडगाम पुलिस के सहयोग से किया गया। कार्यक्रम में देश की रक्षा के लिए शहीद हुए जवानों को श्रद्धांजलि अर्पित की गई। शहीद पुलिस जवान इकबाल हुसैन के नाम पर सूफीपुरा मागाम गवर्नमेंट डिग्री कॉलेज के सामने यादगार तख्ती लगाई गई। इसका उद्घाटन शहीद इकबाल अहमद के वालिद ने किया। इस मौके पर शहीद इकबाल हुसैन के परिजनों ने खुशी का इजहार किया। आपको बताएं कि इकबाल हुसैन 2002 में उधमपुर में आतंकियों से लड़ते हुए शहीद हो गए थे।
ये हमारे लिए फ़ख्र की बात है। शहीद कभी मरता नहीं, शहीद हमेशा ज़िंदा है। जो भी शहीद होता है वो हमेशा ज़िंदा है, वो कभी मरता नहीं। इसीलिए हम उनके हम फैमिली मेम्बर्स हैं। हम तो हम खुशी इजहार करते हैं आज के गवर्नमेंट और महकमा जो है इसको इन शहीदों को याद करते हैं बार बार। हमेशा जब भी आता है कोई ऐसी फंक्शन हो, चाहे यौम आज़ादी हो, चाहे रिपब्लिक डे हो, उन पर इनको याद करते हैं। ये हमारे लिए फ़ख्र की बात है। तो ये भी एक खुश आइन बात है कि इसके नाम पर यह एक संग बुनियाद रखी है, ये नस्ब किया गया। ये भी खुशी की बात है ताकि आने वाले जो भी इसको देखेंगे ये भी यही समझेंगे ये जो नाम है इसका, ये इकबाल हुसैन सूफ़ी जो यहाँ का रहने वाला है, सूफीपुरा मागाम में शहीद हुआ, कि ये क्यों हुआ शहीद, ये हमारे लिए भी फ़ख्र की बात है। जो यहाँ आने वाले नस्लें हैं वो भी देखेंगे, वो भी याद करेंगे इसको, नाम है ये फलानी है, ये वो है, इसका नाम ये है। या कोई भी शहीद हो उसको हर हमेशा
मुल्क की दिफा के लिए उन्होंने कुर्बानी दी है। कब दी है ये मुल्क की
दिफा के लिए उनके कुर्बानी दी है 15/6/2002 में। एक गुलगुलागढ़ उधमपुर डिस्ट्रिक्ट रामबन में शायद उस टाइम में गेड़ा, उसमें उसकी शहादत उसने पाई है वहाँ पर।
मुतमईन जनाब, ये औलाद जवान मुल्क दफा खतर लिहाजा बड़ खुश कुर्बानी पन जान कुर्बान जनाब वक्त वक्त याद कर हर कम याद कर जनाब दुआ याद कर बड़ मुतमईन कि तमो कुर्बानी।
लोकसभा में कांग्रेस के नेता अधीर रंजन चौधरी के निलंबन पर एनसी सांसद डॉक्टर फारूक अब्दुल्ला ने अफसोस का इजहार किया और कहा कि आखिरी दिन एक अच्छे सदस्य को निलंबित किया गया।
मुझे सख्त अफसोस है कि एक अच्छे मेंबर को इन्होंने आखिरी दिन सस्पेंड किया, बहुत अफसोस हुआ।
कैसे देखते हैं प्रधानमंत्री के स्पीच को सर? नो कॉन्फिडेंस।
तो खबरों में फिलहाल इतना ही। नमस्कार।